episode contains foul language. Always check the description of the episode for a more detailed list of episode-specific trigger warnings.
Hi, Weirdos. Welcome to Keep It Weird, the podcast for all things strange and unusual, wacky and wonderful, spooky and spectacular, and everything in between. Every month we get together to chat about all things weird, and we are currently on a bit of a social media / recording break after our busy October, and are also hiding under a rock until this week is over. So, we hope you are doing okay out there during these incredibly trying times. I should have recorded this opening before today, but I didn't, and I'm going to do my best to keep this as upbeat as possible. I am really sorry. I know that a lot of our listeners are going to be in a really, really, really extremely dark place this week and for the coming weeks and the coming years. And yeah, I'm just really sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish that we did have new content for you this week, although I don't know how fun it would be to distract you, and we're going to be back as soon as we can. This week, I wanted to put together something really old school. I wanted to do a Clips episode celebrating our Keep It Weird guests. Here at Keep It Weird headquarters, we try to teach you something new every single episode. We do a ton of research on such an enormous swath of subjects. And unfortunately, we don't have as many guests on the show these days. Like, scheduling between the two of us in different time zones is hard enough. Video episodes add an extra hoop to jump through as well on the editing side. It's a bummer, and we hope to find a solution someday. But this week, I'm missing our guests. So while we're on our week-long hiatus, I wanted to share with you a collection of clips where our guests have been the experts in their topic and have come on the show to really educate us in their career, passion, obsession, or just their everyday life. So you're going to hear from people in this episode who have weird jobs, weird bodies, weird interests, and more. And not that we need to remind you, but just in case there are any new listeners this week, weird is only a negative adjective when it's being used to talk about J.D. Vance. Weird is wonderful. Weird is a compliment. Weird is our absolute favorite thing. Weird is nothing to be ashamed about. In fact, we believe it should be celebrated. So without further ado, let's meet our first weirdo this week. First up, a comedian that I miss seeing so often at the club back in LA. My friend Nick Wuthrich visited the show back in 2019 to teach us about living as a man with no testicles in season 3, episode 6, My Body Ate My Balls. And Nick's going to start off today. Why are you on the show?
I am on the show because I was born without testicles.
You were born without testicles?
Without them. Okay.
Yeah. Well, all right, hold on. Let me elaborate.
Let me rephrase.
Because I want to be specific. So, technically, yes. Because, testicles don't, like, a boy's testicles are in the scrotum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a boy's testicles, a person, a male, their testicles are in the scrotum at birth, but that's not where they start. They start actually up, like, in the abdomen.
Okay.
That's where testicles grow before. Are you having a boy or girl?
I'm having a boy.
Fuck yeah, you need to know this. So, so the testicles actually start up in the abdomen, and then like a certain number of weeks before birth, they actually descend down.
I was just told on my pregnancy app that they probably have descended this week.
So they'll descend down from around the kidneys down into the scrotum, right? That doesn't always go correctly. And it's actually very common. I think it's like 1 in 100 births for what's called an undescended testicle, which means where one testicle went down, but one of them didn't get all the way down. And what they'll typically do within like a few, usually about 6 months, the baby's about 6 months old, is they'll perform a surgery and they'll try to pull down the testicle, get it into the scrotum, and then hope that when the baby goes through puberty and testosterone's introduced into the hormones, and it'll be a smaller testicle too because it didn't fully descend.
Right, because it didn't.
Yeah, so it'll be like a baby mutant testicle, a midget testicle. That's wrong. Little testicle. I don't know.
Tiny testy.
Tiny
testy.
Yeah, and so they hope that when testosterone is introduced in the bloodstream, that it'll actually slowly, maybe not ever go to full size, and sometimes it just dies, and doesn't work at all, and then you're left with one testicle, which is all you really need to make sperm and have a kid. So. And having an undescended testicle or having just one testicle has no effect on the fertility of your children. Okay. So it's not something that's going to be hereditary because it's a process that has to happen. So it's not something that, my dad had an undescended testicle, now my grandpa did too. It doesn't really work that way. Yeah. It's a path, it's like somebody losing an arm in a car accident doesn't mean your kid's not gonna do the same thing, I guess.
True.
So what's unique in my situation is that I actually had bilateral undescended testicles, so it's both sides. And then when the doctors went up and tried to save them and pull them down, they were basically just already dead organs. And so they put them into my scrotum, and then slowly over time, I guess my body thought they were some sort of foreign object, like a tumor or something, and then my body literally just attacked it like it was a foreign cell. Wow. And then they just went away. Because I remember going to a pediatric endocrinologist when I was a kid, and them finding them when I was a kid. And then when I was in college, I went to a urologist, and he was looking all over because he was just wanting to make sure they weren't going to turn to cancer. And he's like, it's nowhere. I think your body just absorbed them.
Wow.
So, which I didn't even know was a fucking thing to say to me. Your body just ate your tonsils. It didn't like them. So that's pretty much what happened to me. And, I could still, science, I'm lucky to live in, the new millennium where, the science is so advanced, thanks to people like Lance Armstrong cheating a whole lot, which is important. Athletes, because of athletes, they really drove the science, honestly. Yeah. Sports drove the science.
100%.
And, when I first started, so I had to be on testosterone injections to be able to function for a lot of reasons. It's not just being able to have sex. It's actually being able to grow facial hair, there's a whole thing that comes with it when you're on testosterone. It's muscle mass. You have to be very careful if you're, so the common term for someone like me is eunuch. Right. So if you're a eunuch, you have to be very careful about osteoporosis, and I'm talking as early as late 20s.
Yeah. Do you have to take calcium and stuff?
I don't have to worry so much about that because I've been on testosterone. But if I were a traditional eunuch who never got on it, you could really start to have brittle bones in your 30s. It's crazy.
Wow.
Well, it's because it's a different. So a lot of people think, you're just like a woman. Well, you're not, though, because your body's ability, women even have testosterone. So you're still going to have some testosterone in your body, but you also don't have the right balance of estrogen because, you don't have the right glands. So you're kind of screwed on both levels of the hormonal spectrum, right? So, you have to really be, in the right care of somebody to prevent a lot of weird shit from happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So I started with injections, I want to say. So here's the thing. I had some injections my freshman year of high school, and then I got insane, horrific acne. From that, right? I specifically remember that. I'll be scarred for life with this. Playing spin the bottle at a house party when I was a freshman in high school, and it landing on me and this one girl not wanting to kiss me because my face was that bad. But it's okay because now she lives in a trailer.
Hey.
Take that, Stephanie. Bitch.
Come back.
And so I got.
now you kind of know what it's like for women when they go on birth control.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I completely
Very
get
true.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
That's our life.
Yep.
so, I got off it for a while until early college because I was like so scarred by like how it made me feel very frustrated because at the time it was injections, and injections are fucking scary because injections, they inject an entire like month's supply of testosterone into your body at one time, and it has to go into a thick muscle mass. So it can either be like the front of your thigh into your butt. Typically it's your butt because it's like there's a lot of room to soak it up. But what's crazy about that, you have no control over how fast your body absorbs it. So sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, and it's like a fucking roller coaster ride. So what would happen to me is I'd get the shot. 4 days later, I would honestly feel like I could flip over my truck with my bare hands. Like
Wow.
I'd feel this strength, right? And then like maybe like 4 to 7 days from needing the next shot, I would just want to jump off a bridge because it was just a constant roller coaster.
Yeah.
And then like the first time I learned about the gels, like 2008, there was this new medication on the market called Testim. And it's like, it was like a Purell hand sanitizer, but with testosterone in it. And then you just put it on your shoulders every single morning, and it just delivered a very small meter dose every single day instead of like a giant month supply. And
So you could kind of even out. And...
right, and not
Nice.
deal with the suicidal thoughts and freaking out my parents.
yeah.
It was
Oh,
bad.
man.
Like early college was bad because I was like all over the map, and
Sure.
and so once just complete life-changing life-changing medication when that came out. And it sucked. It fixed the hormonal problem. One of the things that sucked though, it was basically like putting super glue on your shoulders. So I would put, an undershirt on top of that. And then at the end of the night, I would have to like rip my shirt off my
It's, like,
skin.
stuck
Yeah, it
to
was so
you.
stuck. And so over the years, they perfected it. Now there's androgel and some other things. There are still some injection products. A popular one that some people, like men, I'm unique because I need complete testosterone replacement. I have zero. But like men who just have lower testosterone, they have products like Testapel, which is where they inject like these pellets into your ass.
Oh.
Why? There's pellets of testosterone. It's like 6 months of testosterone and I'm like, no, why would you do that? Because if it doesn't absorb right or it's too high, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
in
You're
your
gonna
butt.
dig
And it's in there.
It's
Ugh.
6 inches into your ass. Like,
That
no,
sounds
that's
awful.
insane. So I love the gel. I'm all about the gel. Costco sells it. It's like it used to be crazy expensive. Like when I first started, Androgel was like $900 a month.
What?
Yeah.
Is
And
that
most
something that
insurance wouldn't even.
I was gonna say, is that
Yeah.
something that insurance would cover?
So now it does. But even if like I have an HSA, so usually like the first part of the year I'm paying out of pocket till I hit the deductible, right?
Yeah.
But like I can go to Costco now and get a month's supply for $135,
Oh
that's
my
pretty
God,
good.
which
that's
is
great.
way
Yeah.
fucking
What a
better. Like
difference.
it was a problem.
So much more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that does remind me of birth control for women because it's like,
100%.
well, and then they have this thing, but that causes cancer. So then they have another pill, but what that does is it makes it so that no one can touch your boobs. So
Yeah.
then they have they have a gel, but everyone's allergic to it.
Yeah.
And it's just
And
like,
they have this
always
ring
some
you can put
crazy
inside
side
of
effect.
you that
Yep.
will kill you. Like,
yeah, it
That
will
might
slip
murder
out.
You're probably gonna have a heart attack. Almost everybody does.
And it's like, great,
Yeah.
cool.
Terrifying
Our
things.
options are endless. We had a lot of fun on this episode learning about Nick's life and Lauren's pregnancy. This episode was actually recorded fairly soon after she found out that she herself was having a boy. I think one of my biggest takeaways after listening to this one is what a wide swath of our friends, family, and neighbors need what is under the umbrella of gender affirming care, even though they don't identify as transgender. Nick is a straight man. He's engaged to his hilarious fiance, Katie, but he needs testosterone to live a normal life. The umbrella of gender affirming care is extremely large. Trans identifying people are only a small portion of that. So when you support laws that strip away the rights of trans people simply because you claim to disagree with them, you're actually hurting so many more people than you realize. You're hurting women with PCOS. You're hurting people who were born intersex. You're hurting men who are born without testicles. I could go on, but this was a really fantastic episode. I learned so much. I highly recommend that you check it out, or that you recommend it to the people in your life who don't understand gender affirming care, because I think Nick is a really good messenger for the population, larger than you think, population of people in this country and all across the world who need things that are under that umbrella, who it's impossible to disagree with. He was born without testicles. He didn't make that decision. It wasn't a choice he made. So a really cool episode. Again, it was season 3, episode 6, My Body Ate My Balls. Next up, moving away from the gender side of sex and straight into the freaky deaky. In season 5, episode 11, The Whole Story, we got to interview Chloe, a sex worker from the UK who specialized in dominatrix and cam work. And we got to ask her all of our naughtiest questions. Here's a clip.
So you are stripping and you're also doing dominatrix work, correct?
Yeah. I mean, pre-corona, I was working, in a dungeon. A lot of them have closed down now for good. So,
too bad.
Yeah, it's it's a shame in London. Like, it's very an underground art. It's not really spoken about a lot. So I did that for a while, and now I'm on cam, which is a lot safer at home, I guess, working online.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what types of laws are there when it comes to dominatrix work?
Well, I'm not sure about the US, but in the UK, it's pretty much all about consent and communication. I think that anything in a private setting, most dungeons are privately owned. Obviously, they're not like strip clubs where they have council members coming around and checking the CCTV footage. Okay, so because it's very private, it's like almost like a therapy counseling session. When you go and have a session with a dom. So it is much more private. It is down to the individual, whether, for instance, if you're doing flogging play or anything to do with that, whether you want marks or not, it really is down to consent and communication. Laws as such, it is legal to be a dominatrix in the UK. Okay. And to have establishments such as dungeons and houses, privately owned houses. But when it comes to the acts as such, there isn't really much. I mean, I was never really told about it. I've done a little bit of reading too. There isn't really much on it other than just consent. It's just the basic level of consent. A lot of people have different views on that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people that don't understand what a dominatrix actually does, because I think a lot of people immediately think, well, you have sex with your clients, and it's like that's a completely different thing. So real quick, just for the people out there who's like, I don't even know what a dominatrix does, what do you do like on a day at work as a dominatrix?
Well, honestly, the good thing about it is, like, the reason why I wanted to do the job in the first place is you meet so many different people. A day at work is so different every single day because people have different needs and different kinks and different things they want to explore. So, I mean, you book a session, whether it's, a lot of people do day sessions. It's really like a therapy office. It's kind of like you fill out a form beforehand. A lot of the time you want to get to know your client. A lot of people are repeat clients, so you would know them inside out by, the third or fourth session. It's a lot of trust. You just kind of pick the kind of avenue you want to go down, whether it be flogging, whether it be sissy play, whether it be breath play, whether it be any type of play. I mean, there are certain boundaries I have personally that I won't, go into like race play or like bestiality or things like that. But
things that you're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, for real, like age play as well. I think for me personally, that's not something I really like to dabble in.
Like, oh, be a 12-year-old girl. It's like, you know what? No, actually,
that's
I think you need
crossing the
help.
line a bit.
It's crossing the line for me personally, but I mean, I don't ever really judge. Yeah, but then still, I think, it is really down to like the person in feeling comfortable. But yeah, a day at work is so different. It depends. And I mean, a lot of dominatrix doms do actually have sex with their therapy partners or their partners in the session. and that's down to them. I've never been full service, so that's not something I offer personally. I'm mostly fully clothed, and so it really just depends on the person or the house that you're working in.
That
So,
was something that I wanted to ask you. You know, you'd said you'd never done full service, and you had your reasons for doing that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's simply because that I feel like I'm a little bit too, what's the word? Small of brain when it comes to sex. Like I can't decompartmentalize my brain too well. You know, I find I get very involved when I'm with a sexual partner, and I find that, you know, a lot of my friends who do work and do full service, they're so much better at just decompartmentalizing and treating it as work and not letting it affect their personal lives, basically. And I find that sex is so important, especially with my personal partners at home, that I didn't really want to jeopardize that in any way. It can become kind of unhealthy with some people, and I found that was, for me, not really something I wanted to like push. But however, you know, I think the women who do it, I'm just like, hats off to you. They're like serious queens. I just,
Of course,
not for me. Not for
Some
me.
people are just able to separate that, and it doesn't have to come into their personal life. But I think I would be a little more like you. I think I would have that struggle, so I can totally understand that.
Yeah, I think that's why some people can't understand sex work, can't understand, you know, full service sex work, because they have that relationship with sex, and they feel that every sexual encounter is, you know, means something, or they get that attachment. So when they picture sex, I think that they can't fathom it. I really think they can't personally fathom it.
Yeah.
So it
I
causes
completely agree.
a disconnect between, you know, it's a job.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, speaking on, you know, my own experience, it's very early. I think that, you know, growing up and maturing had a lot to do with changing my feelings towards the sex industry and women and their bodies just in general, because I remember when I was younger, there were so many actresses that I was like, ugh, I hate her. And as an adult, I can look back and be like, oh, I didn't like her because she was so beautiful. And it was like she was my competition, which is ridiculous because she's Megan Fox and I live in Walnut Hill, Illinois. Like, there's no way we're not on the same level. But I think that women have that idea in our head because it's placed there. It's a societal pressure that, you know, it's every woman for herself. You are competing with everyone around you. So as I've aged, I've been able to look at Megan Fox and be like, she's a literal goddess, and if anyone touches her, I will destroy the earth. As opposed
protect her.
When I was younger and was just so like, whatever, she sucks. So what I'm getting at is, like, as an adult, I can look at the sex industry, sex work, whether it's pornography or stripping or whatever, and I used to think as a young person, oh, it's so demeaning. And as an adult, I can look at it and say, like, that's so empowering that a woman can say, like, I'm using what I have to make a living, and not just like my body, but like I'm using my confidence, my sexuality, my ingenuity. So
absolutely.
With that being said, what about your work makes you feel empowered?
I guess it's like the women around you. I think it's really like a kind of pack animal kind of job, especially in the strip club. Like, you do have to kind of it's like very like being in a zoo. Like, that's how could I explain it more than that? It's like there's groups of girls all, you know, gathered together, and as soon as you kind of work there a while and you kind of gain women's respect and they respect you, you respect them, I feel like people do support you. And you know, it's such a vulnerable, it can be quite a vulnerable job, you know, constantly being naked, constantly being in that kind of vulnerable state. So having other women around you that can kind of lift you up, you know, if you're on your period and you've got a tampon string hanging out and a woman just like, oh, tampon, you know, everyone's like literally like having each other's back. So for me, that was a huge thing. Having girlfriends who weren't judgmental, because I mean, even though we're all there to make money, it's actually more, I guess, friendly, and I guess, I don't know, more
You're
inclusive.
kind of, you're all in it together.
Yeah, 100%.
You're a team.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously there are nasty girls, just like there are all nasty boys everywhere. Like, so, but yeah, for me that was a big thing, having girlfriends who don't judge you. And in the everyday life, the Muggle women, like we call them the Muggles, like they are much more.
I love that.
Much more judgmental. I don't know why. I don't know why it is, but like you can feel the eyes on you. You can feel that kind of, you know, not said judgment, you know.
God, another great episode. Another great guest. What a fantastic podcast. I do think that today, even just like 3 years later, the attitude towards sex work has shifted in a positive way. And I do think that exposure has a lot to do with that. There have been a ton of trends on TikTok, usually with code names like accountant to get past moderators, where women and men have discussed their jobs, what they do, how they do it, how much money they make, what a good night looks like, what a bad night looks like, the dangerous aspects, even the way that lawmakers could make their jobs safer, etc., etc. And I highly recommend listening to this population. Chloe says in this episode, and it's very true, sex work is literally the oldest profession in history. And much like abortions, no amount of legality will end it. It will only make it less safe. So again, incredibly insightful episode and guest. We had so much fun with Chloe, and she told some really fantastic stories. So make sure you give that one a listen if you have not already. And speaking of sexy times, way back in 2019, our resident psychic medium Amy Goldenberg came on the show to answer some listener questions in Season 3, Episode 21, Believing is Seeing. And one of those questions really tickled me. The question was, can a ghost be a perv? And naturally, Amy's answer did not disappoint. This next question is very funny to me.
Okay.
And I had to ask it because I'm also just interested.
Yeah.
Are there any pervy ghosts who just chill in
God,
dressing
that's so
rooms
funny.
or something?
You know what? Yes.
Really?
No, I mean, I used to go, okay, there's this place in Los Angeles called HM 157. It's a historic monument 157. And it's kind of like a co-op sort of. People live there. There's like a couple trailers in the back and a school bus that people live in. My friend lived there for a while, and I used to stay in her school bus in the back. It's also like they also have host events and things like this.
Right.
But there's a bathroom there, and every time I would take a shower, every time I would go in that bathroom, I would feel like there's a pervy ghost in this bathroom, and he would touch my neck when I was in the shower. And it was creepy, and he was just there to be a perv, you know? But I don't actually know. That was such a long time ago that I was still kind of like, I had different beliefs at that point.
Yeah.
But I just called him the pervy ghost, the perv, the bathroom perv. That's what I called him.
You know, it's interesting to think about because we've had so many listeners write in about bathroom stories.
Yeah.
We've had so many, Lauren, the like only experiences she's had that she knows of that she can like pinpoint with something paranormal or something strange has been in a bathroom.
Yeah.
In a public bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you think like, did someone die in here? But really it might just be a perv.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
But then
it
I'm
just
also
might
like,
be.
I also think, well, when we die, we leave behind a lot of our identity, and it's like, why would somebody's desires, once they're like all knowing, like why would their desires continue to be like this weird thing? So I don't know. It could be like we were saying, residual energy. If someone's a perv in a bathroom and they're getting off, and they're like expelling this like really weird, creepy like energy, and they're having like a big energy release, they might leave residual perv energy in that bathroom. You know?
They might just leave that energy. It's not necessarily that there's an entity there, but you feel something there because you feel them the way they were in this bathroom.
Yeah, so you could feel creeped out. But then also what I was saying about ghosts, in my opinion, is like that people who do bad things sometimes have a hard time letting go of their identity. That could be a pervy person who
True.
has a hard time letting go of the bad things that
Could
they
be
did.
something like a child molester.
Yeah, or an adult molester.
Yeah. Or an adult molester.
Yeah.
Any molester.
Yeah. Just like anybody named Lester.
I remember
Just
Lester.
Just kidding.
Chester.
Sorry if you're named Lester or
Yeah,
Chester.
sorry. Don't
or Mo.
Don't stop listening to us.
Yeah.
That was one thing that people would say, like, oh, well, if ghosts were real, and I say people, I mean, like, one person said this once, and I literally looked at them like they were very dumb, and I'm so sorry if you're listening to this and you remember asking me this question, but they said, you know, you believe in ghosts, well, how do you feel about, like, your grandmother watching you have sex? And it's like, well, first of all, I don't believe my grandmother watches me have sex. I feel like she would have enough respect for me to not watch me have sex, one, but
Right.
two, sex is such a human thing. I don't think that it would be of interest to most
Right.
people who have passed on.
Right. And if they've
to-
if they've like crossed over, for instance, like your grandmother crosses over and she becomes her like infinitely enlightened divine self.
she's not gonna be like, oh yeah, fucking
She's not going to, there's no judgment of anything. You could be
Positive
you
or
could be
negative.
killing somebody and she might not have a judgment about it, you know. She might try to prevent you from doing something that would cause you to experience pain. But it's like when we attribute human things, like you said, to spiritual, entirely enlightened, free spiritual beings, like that's again arrogant and silly. You know,
and the thing is like, even if it's just ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean in a it's hard to disconnect from
what we know.
You know, like
what
how
we know
how
is what
could you
we know.
possibly
Exactly.
yeah
Yeah.
how could you possibly imagine anything else? So like
Yeah.
to us, sex is taboo and like food is life, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like to disconnect from that and be like, oh no, sex is just a thing that our bodies do and want to do for reproductive purposes. Really, it's nothing.
Yeah. It's not like yeah, exactly. And when somebody's a pure spirit, like I doubt they're thinking about if anything, they would be like stoked that you're having sex.
True.
You know? If
They're
they
like,
did have
"Good."
some type of opinion, they'd probably be like, ah, yes, the pleasures of human existence. That's why we incarnate.
Yeah.
So we can feel love, so we can feel pleasure, so we
Get
can
it,
feel
girl.
hugging, so we can feel connection with other human beings. Because when we all pass away and we cross over into being pure soul, we're all connected, we're all one. We don't experience that stuff. That's why we come into human form, so we can have relationships. Because we are all one thing. Like, we're all part of one thing.
And there is a little bit of that here on Earth as people.
Yeah.
There is a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
Like there's data to show that there is some sort of collective consciousness, and people do communicate non-verbally, even if you don't feel like you're an especially spiritual person. You know what I mean? You've still, if you're like, nope, I am a plain Jane, I have none of those abilities, there has been a moment in your life where you've been able to communicate with someone without saying a word.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone say that they haven't had an experience like that.
Yeah.
That's a connection. That's a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
It's just once we leave our bodies and we become something different, you're right. Like, you are one. And it's one of those things where it's like, you can't feel good without feeling pain.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, or it's not that you can't, but you can't appreciate.
I feel like you can't heal without feeling pain.
Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
heal without feeling pain. You can't love feels so good because loneliness feels so bad.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's important for, I think, people.
Yeah, to learn,
experience.
like, that's the whole, Earth
School.
is a school for spirits. You
Yeah.
know, we come here, we learn our lessons, and then we learn different lessons, and then we move on and we reflect on those lessons, and then we come back and learn other lessons, or choose not to come back, or whatever it is. But there's this analogy that the doctor that I was talking about earlier, Dr. Brian L. Weiss, he said, our soul is a diamond everybody has a shiny, beautiful, brilliant, perfect, divine diamond as a soul. And when we start off our like journey in the school of earth, our diamond is like covered in dirt, and every lifetime we clean off one facet of it. And the goal is to like clean off all of the facets. And that's why there's certain people that have like quote unquote old souls and newer souls. Is like, it's really not that. It's how many facets of your diamond have you cleaned off throughout lifetimes? Like, what lessons have you learned? And a lot of them are learned through pain. And when we're not in a human body, there is no pain. We don't experience pain. We experience like eternal peace. We don't even experience, I mean, like it is really unconditional love, but not like love in the sense that we feel it in our body when we're in a body. So that's like why we come here.
It's like a love as in like an understanding love.
Yeah, it's
like,
just like unconditional love.
Shanti, shanti, shanti.
Yeah,
that
like
kind
all
of
only
thing.
love
like,
is only love is real.
Yeah.
All is love. But we don't feel it in the same way as we do in our body. So then we come back into bodies in order to have these experiences.
She is a delight. And surprise, she's returning to the show this December. It's been a good long while since we've heard from our psychic friend on the pod, and her life has changed quite a bit in that time. So we're very excited to catch up with her and talk to her more about her strange, strange life. Believing is Seeing is actually a 2-part episode. Episode 20, directly before this one, Life, Death, and the Pursuit of Spirit. We'll complete that one in the first 2 episodes of season 3 as well, titled Higher Self-Care and a Better Flashlight. And for our season 4 finale, The Hope of Christmas Future. All of these episodes feature Amy Goldenberg, so you've got plenty to explore. I also believe she's made a couple appearances on our Patreon. So, you know, if you have $5 that you want to give to your favorite show, www.patreon.com/keepitweirdpodcast. There's, hundreds of bonus episodes that you can listen to there. Okay. You'd think all we talked about was sex and body parts. So let's move on to an expert in getting angry. Our next clip is from an episode that literally made my head feel like it was expanding due to all of the knowledge my brain was consuming. Season 6, episode 23, The Proof is in the Pudding Bones, was all about evolution and how we went from apes in the trees to the Converse-wearing tech wizards we are today. This clip features my sweet and sour husband. You know him as Handsome Joe. Patrons may know him better as Joey Breadsticks. He's a smart guy and, lest we forget, an anthropology minor. Let's hear him break down our earliest forms of societal evolution.
So what am I going to be talking about today? I am going to be talking about one of the more recent blocks of time in human evolution. It is specifically the Neolithic Revolution, also referred to as the Agricultural Revolution. Aren't everybody's balls just exploding with excitement as I say the words Agricultural Revolution? Oh my God. I know my heart is racing. Yeah. Ooh, boy. Hold on a second.
Let's go.
Let me compose myself. So this is a period of time that began approximately 12,000 years ago, and it lasted until essentially the onset of the Bronze Age, around 3300 BC.
Okay.
So the reason that I wanted to pick this specific time period in human evolution was because you know how we take a look at our culture over the course of the last 40 or 50 years and we think wow, this is unrecognizable to the world that our parents were born into. And if we're talking about a scale of, 100 years or 50 years, then yeah, the last 50 years probably take it. But the amount of societal and cultural advancements during the Neolithic evolution, this is the period of time in which human beings start themselves and the world they live in starts to resemble the world that we have inherited ourselves.
Interesting.
So this is where the modern world kind of begins to take shape. So as I said, it's referred to as the first agricultural revolution, beginning with the ending of the most recent ice age. And this when that came to a close. Now, during the most recent ice age, the specific challenges that we as a species faced as we stared down extinction were numerous, they were daunting, and unsurprisingly, because necessity is the mother of invention, we came out of the last ice age as the greatest problem solvers walking the earth at that time ever before. We, at that period of time, had begun our ascent to the top of the food chain because of no other reason than our brains. It was just our brains that enabled us to do that.
Wow.
So this is arguably the greatest spike in cultural and social advancement in human history. It's the beginning of our time as the lone species of human walking Earth. Now, at one point in time, this is bananas. There were as many as 9 different species of human walking the Earth simultaneously.
Isn't that so weird to think
So
of? Like, you look over and think, you're kind of like me, but you're not, and you're kind of scary.
It'll probably never happen again because in order to do
No.
that, you have to be so isolated to create a new
Exactly.
species. So it will never happen again on this planet. But the fact that it was like that
Just
at
to
one
think
time
about
is just
it.
crazy.
Is crazy.
The only way that we as a species could possibly splinter off into separate branches of our own species would be if and when we leave the planet.
Yeah.
So if and when there's a period of time in which some humans leave the planet and colonize elsewhere while some humans stay behind, that is the only way, unless, the total collapse of society as we know it in conjunction with a bunch of volcanoes separates us all for thousands of years again.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for a human being to evolve, whether that's, genetically or just culturally. So, it would basically take space exploration at this point.
Sure.
So, anyway, back to the agricultural revolution. Earlier technological advancements of Homo sapiens had led directly to the extinction of Neanderthals and the Denisovans, who, interestingly enough, are a subspecies along our ancestral tree, so newly discovered that at no point in time during my studies as an anthropology minor did I ever read the word Denisovan. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Even doing research for this episode, I was reading all of these articles that were dated like 2019 and 2020, 2021 of all of these new things, and the Denisovans were mentioned, and I was like, excuse me? We're just
What is that
discovering these
word?
things?
Yeah.
How are we just finding this? Which is very exciting.
But like the Neanderthals, which, in the last 5 years, I want to say, maybe more, who's to say? COVID ruined me. In the last semi very recent future, it was proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that all humans carry trace amounts of Neanderthal DNA.
Yeah.
All humans also carry trace amounts of Denisovan DNA.
Wow.
So the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, they just simply could not keep up with this new and improved Cro-Magnon human. But in a way, they live on forever. We carry their genetic code.
We carry them
our
with
own.
us.
They're
So,
with us forever.
which feels
Never
nice.
forget you.
When
Yeah.
I tuck
You're
tuck
never
myself
really
into bed at
alone.
night, I say goodnight, Ashley, and she says goodnight, and I say goodnight, Penny, goodnight, Frankie, and then they say goodnight, and I say goodnight, Jesus, and then Jesus says goodnight, and then I say goodnight, Neanderthals and Denisovans, and then they say
My favorite part of all of that was that Penny and Frankie said goodnight.
yeah, they did.
They do every night.
They don't normally come out of their shell and speak out loud, but for the good nights, we always do.
That's very sweet.
So this is the period of time, again, talking about the agricultural revolution. I'm trying to spice it up a little bit here. This is the period of time during which our ancestors largely abandoned the hunter-gatherer lifestyle that they had lived for over 1 million years previously in favor of a stationary life supported by our newfound ability to domesticate plants into crops and animals first into farm equipment and then into sustainable sources of their own food, like like milk and eggs. And this is where we as a species no longer need to follow the seasonal migrations of our favorite foods and forage for berries and plants. It's when we start to be able to practice deforestation, clearing forests to make way for nice level farm fields. We develop irrigation, allowing us to deliberately transform the landscape to better suit our needs.
Love it.
Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
What
And
brilliant humans.
where we got that idea, right?
Where?
Quetzalcoatl.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay.
Okay,
Yet to
we're
be
just gonna skip over
confirmed.
that.
And also Quetzalcoatl, just so you know, Ashley, Quetzalcoatl is thousands of years later. So get with the program.
Okay, fine.
So this newfound ability of human beings to farm produce on a large scale not only allowed us to stop moving and set down some roots, but it allowed for societies and population centers to expand exponentially, leading to the first permanent settlements like Jericho in the West Bank of Palestine, or Mesopotamia, Babylon. So enhanced trade comes about at this period of time as well, expanding our horizons, exposing ourselves to new cultures and their ways of life, which continues idea sharing and problem solving. It's a period of time when villages became towns and towns became cities. Isn't
Wow.
that beautiful?
Yeah,
That's
so
a
beautiful.
beautiful world.
I'll go over more a little bit later on, but it's a period of time that ushered in written language, pottery, polished stone tools, architecture, specialized labor, the smelting of minerals and metals to create alloys. It's just really, really, really incredible. So things really start to pop off about 10,000 years ago. It's popping off in the Fertile Crescent, everybody. Where's the Fertile Crescent? Anybody know? Anybody
Africa.
on this chat? Africa. Okay. Lauren, any guesses?
No. Fertile. No, I have nothing.
The Fertile Crescent, obviously it's crescent shaped, and it's a piece of land that stretches from the Lower Nile in Egypt, which is counterintuitive because that's actually the northernmost part of Egypt, because the Nile flows from south to north.
Yeah.
So ironically, the northernmost part of Egypt is the Lower Kingdom, and the lowermost part of Egypt is the Upper Kingdom. How about
I was
that?
close.
Way to twist it.
Yeah, no, Ashley, you're technically not wrong. The western boundary is absolutely in Africa. The eastern boundary is a stretch of land known as Mesopotamia.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody know where Mesopotamia is? Modern day globe?
It's made up.
It's a fake place.
It's not.
Okay, no.
It's a real place
So, you
that
know-
today it's almost exclusively within the borders of Iraq.
Oh.
All
Oh,
right?
okay.
Sure, I was going to say that.
I was going to guess Iraq.
I know you were. You were so close. I heard it was on the tip of your tongue, and then you
Right
were like,
after
no.
fake
No.
place was Iraq.
Yeah. So the word Mesopotamia in Greek translates to between two rivers. So you've got the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers there. You've got the Nile River in Egypt. That's where the fertile part of Fertile Crescent comes in, because
Okay.
again, this is the agricultural revolution. You need to be able to irrigate your fields. So these civilizations had to spring up next to not just big water sources, but big water sources that had a current to them. So all of the beginning of modern civilization, this is technically, after the Neolithic revolution, but the kingdoms of Egypt, Mesopotamia and Babylon, Indus Valley, they're all situated around massive rivers.
Okay.
So the first big agricultural step undertaken during this period is the selective breeding of grasses, wheat, corn, barley. This is like our R&D period in which we're figuring out what's easy to grow, what's a bitch to grow, what tastes good, what tastes like shit.
Right.
This is where we're like figuring out how to farm things.
I mean, when you said agricultural revolution, I just imagined a bunch of wheat blowing in the wind. So I'm glad we're getting there.
Yeah. Not too far off. And then after the grasses, we moved on to lentils, flaxseed, chickpeas, figs. After we developed the fig, shortly thereafter, we developed the fig Newton. This is a really important period of time for snacking purposes.
Of course.
Thank God for the evolution of the fig Newton.
Yes, thank God. Fig Newtons. Here's the thing about Fig Newtons. Brief sidebar. Fig Newtons. The first Fig Newton can't be beat. Nothing comes close to the first Fig Newton. The fourth Fig Newton is disgusting.
That's when it's
Too
time
much
to
fig.
put it away.
The tipping point, I think, is 2 Fig
I
Newtons.
think
Yeah,
so.
I
two,
think if you
two and a
eat more
half.
than
You
2
can't
Fig
go more than
Newtons-
two and a
Wait,
half.
also-
Fig
No,
Newtons.
it's just diminishing
Do
returns.
they still exist? I feel like I haven't seen fig Newtons in the stores.
Of course.
Okay, well.
Go down that cookie aisle, babe.
Oh, dang.
They have to exist, but I think the problem is they all get snatched up at 6 a.m. by all the senior citizens who are doing their shopping
Fair,
then.
fair.
So
There's never any left by the time our lazy asses get to
Right.
the
No.
store.
So as I mentioned previously, the domestication of animals happened concurrently with this, spurred on by necessity. So animals that produced milk or eggs or possessed traits that were suitable for hard labor were prioritized. Animals that were reliable sources of hide, leather
Yeah.
or wool, were close to follow. But even animals that just stood around and pooped all day, like my cats, weren't entirely left out of the equation because fertilizer was
Fertilizer,
almost
yeah.
as valuable
There you
as
go.
anything to a farmer in the Neolithic period. So, lastly, even though they weren't really used for farming, camels and their domestication is a really important thing that happens in this period of time because they were the station wagons of their day. They were able to traverse long distances with minimal water, which allowed trade and new trade routes to flourish.
Thanks, camels.
Even though they're nasty, they smell bad, they spit at you when you're 12 years old and you're at the fair just minding your own business.
Oh, I
They
wonder.
suck.
I wonder
if
who
that ever happened to Joe.
No.
Spit at you at the fair.
No. If you want to hear something funny, the thing that came out of my mouth after this camel spit at me and just narrowly missed me with a big old wad of spit, I dodged it. And I looked at the camel and I said verbatim to the camel, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I like that that's what came out of my mouth at 12 years old.
Like, I hope
When
he
my friend's
understood your
parents brought me to the Big E. Are you fucking kidding me? What the shit,
Like,
dude?
Stick it to
Insulted.
him. Stick it to him.
Isn't he a treat? My all-time favorite thing is having him on the show and just poking that bear. Poke, poke, poke. Poke, poke, poke. Poke that bear. Proof is in the Pudding Bones is a really great episode. Joe is not done here. He goes on to teach us about farming and trade, and we learn so much. And of course, then Lauren and I bust through the Kool-Aid Man soon after to discuss creationism and the stoned ape theory while smoke flows out of Joe's ears and Charles Darwin thrashes in his grave. But intelligent conversations are still had. I think you'll really dig it. Get it? Dig? Sorry. That was an anthropology miner's wife joke. I'm going to write a new story. The time traveler's wife, but it's going to be anthropology miner's wife. Let's move on. Sometimes our guests' expertise does not come from their job or their life experience, but from one of their obsessions, their true loves. Our next guest's true love is the sport of football and a cursed team that is, spoiler alert, still cursed to this day. The season 4 premiere was called Rah Rah Sis Boom Ah and featured comedian, actor, and writer Carl Tart as he teaches us about the curse of the New Orleans Saints. Carl's actually going to tell us about a
Yes,
curse,
how
but first
to
of all,
cook hearts.
how to cook hearts in a stove at a party.
Make sure you use garlic powder for sure.
Your dad played football,
He did
high
yeah.
level football.
He made
college?
it to the pros. Very short lived career
Right.
in the pros.
Yeah.
Not really, didn't really play in the pros, but he made it.
Yeah.
That's still cool.
But yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, I'm
And
sure
he's doing
got
well?
some- Yeah, he's doing fine. His
Good.
knees hurt.
Sure.
But
We all.
so
I
did
feel like-
Joe's.
yeah,
I mean-
like we all have
I
bad
think
knees.
he's got diabetes, but he's an older black guy.
Yeah, that's just the norm. That happens.
My story
Yes.
is not as in depth as Lauren's.
That's okay.
That's all right. There's
I
no
didn't tell
right
me
or
we
wrong
was
way.
Really writing
Oh,
essays in these
please.
streets.
Oh, yeah, we write essays.
Hey, this is
No,
year
I'm just
4
kidding.
for us. We've
Mhm.
learned we just have become essay writers.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But my story, after you said you wanted to do a sports episode,
Uh-huh.
Ashley, I was like, what is a weird story that I know from sports? And I racked my brain. I was like, oh, my hometown, New Orleans Saints.
Yes.
We're cursed. Did y'all know that?
I didn't.
I did not.
Yes. We are a cursed team. Now, when I was growing up, the story was that there was a witch that came down when the team was formed and said, "You will never win a Super Bowl."
That's my favorite story that I've heard yet.
But it is not true. I couldn't find any evidence.
Hey,
on
it might
this.
be. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know for sure. I mean, New Orleans people, they probably didn't log a lot of the stuff to put on Google.
Mm-hmm.
But what is true is the location of the Louisiana Superdome.
Okay.
Now, New Orleans Saints were founded in 1966.
Okay.
That was when the team came out, and they were bad from the beginning. But it was an expansion team.
Yeah.
You know, it's new to the league and stuff like that. In 1975, they got their arena, the world famous Louisiana Superdome, now known as the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Ah.
It was completed in 1975, and it was built on land that was previously a cemetery.
Of course it was.
Why do
Yeah.
we keep doing
Yeah.
this?
Why do we do this?
We've all seen the movie Poltergeist.
Yeah.
The New Orleans Saints
know
go
what
through a
happens.
real life poltergeist.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah,
this
that's
all
bad.
starts in 1822. The Girard Street Cemetery in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was doomed from the beginning. Because at this time, around this time between the 1830s, the 1820s and the 1830s, there was a cholera outbreak in Louisiana.
Oh, geez.
I mean, that place is surrounded by water.
Right.
And there's, rats the size of,
Right.
small
You're
cars.
asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Asking for a little disease, maybe.
Yeah. They're called nutria rats. We eat them. That is
Delicious.
not a joke.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Big ass swamp rats.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
This
Have
has
you
been-
eaten one?
I have had.
How is it?
Not for me,
Okay.
but it was more. It wasn't that the food that it was nasty. It was just I knew what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
I
That's
knew that it was-
hard
be
to
able to
push past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see like rats in New York,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh my god, that's a big ass rat. It's like the size of a shoe." No,
Uh-huh.
these rats are
Like a
like
cat.
the size of dogs.
Oh.
Like, they're big. They're big.
That's my nightmare. And they
Oh
come
my
from the
God.
swamp. It's
Yeah,
just
they're
like
in
the
the swamp.
perfect
They got big
storm.
old teeth.
What do they what do you eat the rats in?
Hot sauce.
That's the most Louisiana thing I've ever heard in my life. A big old rat and hot sauce.
What do you mean when you eating it?
I
Like,
didn't know if it was like we put it in gumbo or like we
oh no,
put
you cook
in...
you cook it on its own. You like roast
Yeah,
it, like
you roast it?
You would
yeah.
just
Oh,
eat
okay.
rat and hot sauce.
Yeah, it's the protein of the meal. So like
Okay.
you got your potatoes and
So you might have a side
vegetables.
dish. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But that's like the
And
star.
that.
It's like
Yeah.
chicken or
Listen, I'm from Southern Illinois. I've had squirrel, I've had frog, I've had we catch whatever in our yards and
Yeah.
eat it.
We used to have fried frog legs, and
I'm
it was
familiar.
a treat. I enjoyed it.
yeah.
big
I again another thing that I wasn't into.
Yeah.
I got called bougie in Hollywood real quick because
Did
I didn't
you?
like pig feet, any of that stuff. It
Hey,
was
you like
nasty.
what you like.
You like what you like. I like bacon.
Yes.
Everybody likes bacon.
Amen.
But it was an above ground cemetery and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But because of the cholera outbreak, there were too many bodies and not enough space to put them. So people just started piling up
Oh my gosh.
dead bodies. So literally, like, this is the lawlessness of this place in the 1830s.
Yeah.
And you could literally just walk down the street and pass by this cemetery, and there's just a pile of dead bodies
Oh my
at
word.
this dang on cemetery.
Nope.
So by 1880, this place was in such like disrepair that it had an odor to it. Like, I mean, at that time they had, found more space and dug up more. But in New Orleans, because of the sea level thing, the graves are, above ground and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the pile of bodies just kind of had
Just
to be
was
thrown.
hanging out.
Yeah. Kind of had to be thrown in a pile. And then
Wow.
50 years go by and this place is just not being taken care of.
Yeah. What a nightmare.
And when it rained, that spreads disease and
course.
more cholera and
Ooh.
nasty stuff like that. So the mayor of the town at that time demanded that it be shut down. And it did not get shut down. It did.
Oh my
it
gosh.
just kept on pushing. And it kept getting bought by other churches, and
Mhm.
those people would not keep up with the upkeep of this place. And it was just known as the worst cemetery in the city. So by the 1940s, imagine what it's like 100 years later.
Yeah.
Like
Because I was
still,
going to say, back in the 1800s, a lot of the time, too, if you couldn't afford to give your family a proper burial, you would just take the body to a cemetery and like dig a hole where an existing grave was and throw the body in.
Yeah, that's
so. That's just
That's
bonkers
crazy.
to me. That's
Yeah.
the Wild West.
Just throw it in. Add it in there. Yeah. That is nuts.
That's kind of what they just did.
Yeah.
Like that, when that church bought it, Christ Cathedral Church is what it was called, and that church was in bad shape too. And they were just like, all this has got to be torn away. So by the 1940s, the mayor demanded that the church be torn down and the cemetery be torn down, and it still lasted until 1958.
Wow.
And then finally in 1958, the tombs that were above ground, which were all jacked up and ransacked, and it was just bad, they were all moved by race because it's 1958 in New Orleans. So like black people got sent to one side of town and white people got sent to other cemeteries. It's like, how do you know? They're all skeletons.
Yeah.
You're making assumptions. You're making a lot of
point.
assumptions right now.
How
that
do
name
you know?
sounds.
Yeah, that name. Oh gosh.
So this is 1958, and finally this land is kind of spread out and is given to the city, and they kind of just flatten it out. Cut to 1966. Team comes around. 1967 is their first year, and they play at the Tulane Stadium from 1967 to 1975, when the fabulous Superdome is built on what land used to be the Girard Street Cemetery.
Whoops.
Just a great piece of land.
Yeah, great piece of land. Now, rumor has it, and by rumor I mean facts and history, have it that the Saints were bad before this was built, but they didn't get no better.
It didn't help.
They didn't get any better.
Yeah. Nope. That's
to
true.
where they did not have a winning season until 1987. So 20 years in.
Wow.
Was when they finally made it to the playoffs, and they lost in the first playoff game they ever had to the Minnesota Vikings, whom I hate.
We don't like the Vikings.
We don't like the Vikings here. And then we didn't win a playoff game until the year 2000. Okay. So between 1987 and 2000, was that 13 years?
Jeez. Yeah.
That's when we won our first playoff game.
Oh my goodness.
And then in 2000, before that game, there was a woman named Ava K. Jones, who was a voodoo priestess, who came to the Superdome and who had a big boa constrictor around her neck and did a whole presentation before the game to basically ward off all spirits, all evil spirits from around the team. This is before that playoff game. And in that game, we were up 31-10 at halftime.
Whoa.
And then in the third quarter, the Rams, who were in St. Louis at the time, just started coming back.
Oh, no.
31-17. 31-24. 31-28. And now at the end of this game, we punt the ball to them. And in true voodoo fashion, the Ram receiver catches it, and he drops it immediately.
Oh, my gosh.
And we recover it. And we win our first playoff game.
Oh, my God. The priestess did it.
The priestess did it.
It was all her.
Until she didn't do it.
Oh. Okay. Well.
But in those next few years, we started to have winning seasons finally.
Okay.
We never won until 2010. When we were doing background, my Saints finally had a 13-game winning season in the regular season. They went to the playoffs, and we won all the playoff games, made it to the Super Bowl, and we won.
Yeah.
Finally.
Great.
You think that the curse is dead. 2010 was the year. But wait, there is more. Because after that season, we were accused of cheating.
Really?
Really?
Now listen to this. You guys aren't football fans, but you can see how ridiculous this sounds. What we were accused of doing was paying players extra money and incentives for big hits and to injure the players, and I'm putting those in air quotes because they just were paid to have big hits.
Yeah.
Now, is it safe? No. Is football safe? No.
No. Yeah.
I was like, no, not at all.
Have incentives being given since Little League? Like, I remember coaches used to say, if you knock somebody's helmet off, we're going to get pizza after the game.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, hell yeah.
It's
Let's
a thing.
do it.
And it's just in the NFL.
It's part of football.
That cat scared me.
Hi, Gabby. Good morning.
Yeah, there is a black cat here. That was the best reaction.
instead of pizza, it was $25,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a little
It's a
different.
little different. You can get 25,000 pizzas. $1,000 pizza.
Yes. That's a good
That's
pizza.
a good pizza. Or you can get 250,000 pizzas.
Yeah.
But like, so we got accused of cheating. Our defensive coordinator gets fired. Our coach gets banned for a year. You know who the team that
What?
accused us of cheating?
Who?
The Minnesota
Oh,
Vikings.
those
Oh,
sons of bitches.
even-
I hate
Even
them.
more of a reason.
I
to
hate them now, too.
Yeah. I didn't like them before, but I really don't like them now. No, I didn't care about them before. But
I
decimated
didn't know
us
they were a team.
that year after. We lost more games than we won. It was back to, oh, by the way, in the 80s, the Saints were called the Aints. And the
Oh.
fans would show up to the game with brown paper bags over their heads.
Oh,
and that was like the
that was the
known thing.
thing,
We were
yeah.
the bad team of the league. We were,
dang.
and then we finally thought we turned it all around. The curse was dead.
Mhm.
We won the Super Bowl. And then literally the next year, we go back to being bad. But then things kind of pick up over the years.
Yeah.
And we start to go, like, win playoff games and make it back to the playoffs over the recent years. And then 2 years ago, we make it to the playoffs, and it is the NFC Championship, and we're about to go to the Super Bowl. And at the end of the game, their team's quarterback throws a crazy pass that he avoided getting a sack. That means he avoids getting hit, so he just throws it in the air.
Yeah.
One of their players catches it. Our defensive player overplays it and gets burnt. They score a touchdown and beat us in the last second of the game.
It was the last second.
Last second of the game. And you
That's
know what
awful.
team that was?
Oh, was it the
The
Vikings?
Minnesota Vikings.
Shut up. Wait, you said this was 2 years ago?
2 years
I
ago.
actually remember this game only because I have a friend
no.
from Minnesota and a friend from Louisiana, and they got in like an actual fight
Yeah.
over it. Like they were like screaming at each other, and I was just getting drunk in the corner. Like, why do we care about this?
Yeah.
Now
was-
you know.
It was terrible. And then last year, we make it to the NFC Championship game again.
Uh-huh.
One game away from the Super Bowl. Finally having winning seasons. Yeah, that game, what they're calling the miracle in Minnesota,
Yeah.
which we call the mishap in Minnesota.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We finally moved past it, and this year we're playing against the LA Rams. Drew Brees steps back, throws a pass to one of his receivers. Before the ball can even come close to this receiver, one of the defensive players on the Rams knocks him out.
Ooh.
Full helmet to helmet, which is illegal.
Ooh.
You're not allowed to, a defensive player is not allowed to touch the offensive receiver until he has an opportunity to catch the ball. Then you're allowed
Okay.
to try to not let him do it.
Okay.
Right.
But the ball was like going to be caught by him, and this dude just not even.
Nailed him.
Oh, he also has to look for the ball. He has to turn his head to
that's
see
coming.
like the ball's coming
Okay.
to try to make a fair defensive
Right.
play. This guy didn't
He
do that.
didn't.
He just knocked him out.
Oh my God.
Pass interference is what that is called.
Yeah.
So we're like, it's okay. Pass
Yeah.
interference, a 15-yard penalty.
It's
We're
going to be
going
great.
down the field, baby.
Yeah.
Refs don't call it.
What?
Everybody goes insane.
Bullshit.
Everybody goes insane. I'll show
Was
you
this
this
in
after.
New Orleans?
This is in New Orleans.
This was in New Orleans.
I
And
think
the
that
refs-
same friend who's from Louisiana was going crazy about this again, but like again, I'm never paying
Yeah.
close enough attention. I'm like, why is Meredith so mad?
Oh,
all
Meredith
the time?
knows. Meredith knows. And I can show you the play after we get done here. It's egregious, and the refs don't review it,
That's crazy.
and we can't get a review on it, and they don't call it, and the Rams beat us.
Was it out here? Were they playing out here?
No,
was
no,
in
we
New
were in
Orleans.
Louisiana.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, it was even worse.
That's horrible.
And the Rams end up going to the Super Bowl. They lose to Tom Brady, of course, because they weren't supposed to be there because
Yeah.
they were not good enough. And we're mad. We're pissed. So this year, we complained. We actually literally filed a formal complaint
Yeah,
to the refs,
as you should.
and they got in trouble because
Good.
it was an egregiously missed
Oh.
call. And refs don't like that.
Oh,
They don't like to be
No.
called out.
So now they're gonna hate you guys forever.
Yeah. So this past season, we are getting screwed all year, but managed to still have a great season. And we make it to the playoffs, but we have the best record in the NFC South, which is our little conference, which houses the Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Carolina Panthers, and I am blanking on the last team.
We
Doesn't
can't
matter.
help you.
Yeah, we will not be able to help you.
The Atlanta Falcons. And we make it, and we're like, oh, we get a first round bye. Like if Seattle beats San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like strength of scheduling type
Yeah.
thing. So Seattle has to beat San Francisco in their game. And if they beat San Francisco, then we get to sit out a week and just go straight to the divisional.
Which would have been amazing.
Which would have been great. Seattle loses in the last second. So now we have to play.
You cannot.
We have to
win.
play the wild card game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's cool.
Yeah.
We've had a great season.
Just do well, guys.
Just do well in the wild card.
Right.
You know,
You got this.
it's tough. It's a wild card game.
Mhm.
But you know, we got it.
Yeah.
Who we gonna play against?
Oh no.
The Minnesota Vikings.
No, that is unreal. No,
The cursed
this is a nightmare.
Minnesota Vikings. And they beat us.
Ugh.
We lose.
They're the reason for the curse.
And
I
you
don't
know-
even think it's the cemetery. It's,
It's
the
the
Vikings.
Minnesota Vikings. And you know what they do every time they beat us in a playoff game and they go on to the next round? They lose because they suck.
So then it's even more obnoxious because
It's
you're like, yeah,
extremely-
you're
'cause
terrible. We
they're-
should have won.
It sucks shit
Yeah,
every time.
that's so annoying.
And so they did that same thing this year. They made it to the next round
Mhm.
and they got their asses blown out because
Yep.
they're pieces of shit.
Yep.
And so
Also-
the curse.
My new least favorite team in the NFL.
I know. Now I
Thank
hate the Vikings,
Hate
and
the
that's
Vikings.
again. That's my other friend who gets in the fights with Meredith. So I'm just not going to support her ever. Sorry, I'm on Team Meredith now. I'm for the Saints.
And that is the curse
Mm.
of the New Orleans Saints.
That is rough.
How do we fix this?
I don't know.
Do we need like a couple of voodoo
Yeah, we need to
ladies?
get Ava K. Jones to come back, and she needs to bring a busload of her homegirls.
Yeah, more snakes.
More
maybe.
snakes.
Maybe instead of a cheerleading team, just have voodoo priestesses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's a great
every
idea.
game.
Instead of pom poms, boa constrictors.
Because cheers are technically just like spells.
That's
for
true.
sports.
Rah rah shish kumbah. Like that's a spell.
That is
Sis boom ba.
Nobody's said that since like the 40s.
Rah, rah, sis boom ba.
Yeah, just it's a spell.
that's
it's
a spell.
witchcraft,
That's double
basically.
double toil and trouble.
Yes.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Sports was absolutely a topic I didn't ever think we would get a 2-part episode out of on this show, but we are professionals and we did it. All right, we did it. Both parts 1 and 2 of this episode, part 2 directly following, called Clean Sheets, No Ghosts, Can't Lose, is another banger. And Carl Tart was a fantastic and hilarious guest, and we can't express to you how exciting it is to watch his career explode. Since this episode that kicked off our 2020 season, maybe we should have hired a voodoo priestess too, looking back, but Carl has appeared on The Good Place, Superstore, Blockbuster, History of the World Part 2, and 20 episodes of Grand Crew starring alongside Nicole Byer. Remember his name. You'll be hearing it in the future. And another name you'll be hearing if you haven't already heard it, our next guest is comedian and actor DJ Demers. DJ came on for a very special Hometown Haunts episode all about Canada. Season 5, episode 19, titled Flaming Hosiers. And not only did we learn a ton about our neighbors to the north, like how they drink their milk in bags, we also learned a lot about him and what makes him so special. And one of my favorite jokes you told is actually about America's Got Talent and about how, like, when you audition for them, you were like, they were like, hearing aids, get over here. And you were like, I also do stand-up comedy. And they were like, just bring the hearing aids. We'll figure the rest out later.
Wow, that's like almost word for word how the joke goes. So
Really?
thank you. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm
good
sure I
merie.
didn't,
And that is pretty accurate. That is how the whole process
Oh,
on
that's
AGT
what
goes.
I've heard. And I've
Yeah, you
I've
were
seen
witness
the
to
show.
it.
Yeah. I've watched a couple episodes. I kind of know how it goes.
I mean, I get it. They're very good at tugging at the heartstrings.
Hell yeah.
So as much as
That's what
I'm
they go
cynical
for.
about that stuff, sometimes they'll do it in such a way where you're like, I know that's manufactured, but damn, if that didn't move me a little bit.
Damn.
I got
That
the
didn't bring
tears
a
coming
tear to
out
my
my
eyes.
eyes. Yeah, they make me cry every time. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, just before we get into it, you wear hearing aids because...
I needed comedy material.
Yes, exactly.
Of course.
I needed
Couldn't just
a
be a
st- I
regular ass
needed a
white
shtick.
dude in 2021. I
Like,
mean,
shtick. Come on.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I wear them. I've had them since I was 4, so they don't know if I was born with it or if it, I got a lot of ear infections when I was young, so it could have been from that. I actually just found out an ear, nose, and throat doctor came up to me after a show in Ventura Harbor 2 weeks ago, a retired ear, nose, throat doctor, and he asked me if I had a lot of ear infections when I was young. And I said, yeah, and he asked me how old I was. I said, I'm 35. And he said, do you know kids in, I think, the early 90s, 91, started getting an immunization against a germ that caused ear infection. So, because I knew a lot of kids, not just me, who got a lot of ear infections. He said kids very rarely get ear infections anymore because of this immunization now. So I'm like, maybe if I would have been born 5 years later, maybe I wouldn't be hard of hearing. But I don't know.
Interesting.
But this guy was so funny. He was so comfortable. There was a jazz band playing after the show, and he just came up to me. I'd never met this guy. He just watched me perform. He goes, must be hard for you to appreciate jazz. I was like,
You really went for
Excuse me?
Excuse me, sir?
maybe, hi, my name's Joe or something.
Also, I
It's
can
me
hear the
first.
jazz.
Yeah. I'm
That's
enjoying
happening.
the music.
I
in
think he
this
was just trying to
room.
say there's a lot of intricacies. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
he's not really wrong. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff in jazz, but
But
it's a pretty
still.
bold opening line. To...
So forward.
That's
Did
true.
you ever have to get, this is such a random question, did you ever have to get tubes in your ears when you were younger?
Yep, I had that done 7 or 8 times. Maybe
Yeah.
probably 8 times. A lot. They'd fall out and I'd get them again.
Well, I thought of it because I was reading a story recently that a lot of adults are finding out that their tubes didn't fall out, and ear, nose, and throat doctors are digging out tubes that have been in people's ears for 20 plus years because the doctors say they'll just fall out, but they, I guess with certain ears they don't, and they're
wow.
getting huge buildups of wax and crazy thing in their ears because of these tubes. So that freaked me out. I don't think that
Wow.
happened to you, but it freaked me out.
What
Yeah.
what year were you born? I can edit this out. I'll
86.
I'll bleep it.
I don't give a
You're,
shit.
you're in entertainment.
care.
I'll bleep out your age.
I
God
really
forbid
don't care.
someone figures
I
it
understand
out.
why some people in this industry do, but I don't think I'm really skating by on my youth or anything. I don't know.
You're really banking on it.
Yeah.
One more question, and I think we've talked about this before. Right now, we're sitting how many feet apart? 4 feet apart.
Leave it in.
I had so much coffee today. We're sitting 4 feet apart. Can you hear me pretty clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you. I told you guys before the show I got this little device from a hearing aid company I work with. Phonak, that's the name of the company. And it's help. I'm trying to see if this little mic will help me, pick you up directionally.
Mm-hmm.
It is helping. But even without this mic, yeah, I mean, we're in a quiet living room.
Yeah.
I'd hear you fine. But if there was any sort of background noise, I would struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, this is totally fine. But the pandemic, everybody had the mask on.
Ooh.
Ooh,
It's
I
been
made it so
rough.
hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I have jokes about it now, obviously, but it's
Sure.
people have always asked me, how much can you hear and how much are you lip reading? And I was never able to do the math, but now that everybody's covered their mouth, I was finally able to run the numbers. And turns out I'm lip reading 100% of the time. So it's been brutal. It's
No
been
kidding.
brutal.
DJ is so funny. Since he's been on the show, he's released another comedy special called Born in 86, and he produced, wrote, and starred in a season of TV up in Canada and a comedy called One More Time. You should absolutely check out his stuff and listen to the rest of this episode. It turns out Canada has some very strange stories. Okay, we're heading into our final clip. This was an episode that Lauren was awfully nervous for, but I think she walked away from it more educated, more open-minded, less judgmental, and definitely more brave. In 2019, our good friend Melanie Vertibadian came on the show to teach us about the deep blue sea and all the creatures that reside within it. Season 3, Episode 8, Under Pressure, and Episode 9, Kraken Jokes had us laughing and screaming at the wonders of our very own wet world. Luckily, we have a friend who's a marine biologist to hold our hands through it all. Let's pass it on to Mel.
Okay.
Tell us some boring science stuff.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, before I get into the funner things, if you will, quote, air quotes for Lauren. So I'm gonna try to do a quick background on how the ocean is divided up. So you can really think about its light, its pressure, it's the availability of food and oxygen, and that's kind of what determines what can survive at those crazy depths. So light can only really penetrate the ocean about the first 200 meters, and that's not very far at all. And that's where most of big pieces of algae like the kelp that we see, and also where phytoplankton can survive. And phytoplankton is microscopic algae that operates just like plants on land. They take in carbon dioxide and nutrients and sun, and they produce oxygen, essentially. It's the base of the ocean food chain, as you might imagine, just like, again, plants on land. And phytoplankton produces about 30% of the Earth's available oxygen.
Oh, wow.
So again, just on the surface, without the ocean, we wouldn't be here, basically.
Right.
So most of the larger algae can only really grow near the coast because it needs nutrients to grow, and a lot of runoff provides a lot of those nutrients. So too much fertilizer is bad, but the normal amount that would naturally run off into the ocean is what essentially causes large pieces of algae to be able to grow, which in turn provides habitats for very many coastline organisms. Think of a forest on land versus a forest in the ocean made of seaweed instead of trees.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're talking in terms of where most of our oxygen comes from. So that zone, sort of the surface, is called the photic zone, where light can reach.
Okay.
And then from about 200 to about 1,000 meters is what they call the twilight zone of the ocean.
Ooh,
right?
That's the spooky zone.
Yes. So light is limited. There's some light, and about 20% of organic matter that normally lives near the surface finds its way there. So if stuff dies, it starts to kind of fall. And a lot of those organisms in there have these funky adaptations that allow them to survive there. Most of that stuff is what scientists call nekton. So not plankton. Plankton just floats around and it goes wherever the current takes it. So think jellies. Tiny organisms like plankton, they just go where the water takes them. They don't have muscles, or they're not large
just
enough
going with
to
the flow.
control their...
What kind of plankton work in like burger restaurants?
Yes,
So
And have evil plans.
that probably, in all honesty, is most closely, it's like some kind of crustacean. So possibly like krill, which is what a lot of whales would eat.
Yes.
So the name of the gentleman, may he rest in peace, I cannot remember the creator's name of SpongeBob, who recently passed away.
I forgot.
right.
He actually also had a degree in marine biology, so it was really interesting. So when you watch, he did. And
I
so
love that.
when you watch SpongeBob, there's actually like, again, science accidentally just leaks through into kids
Right.
because yes, sponges don't live in a pineapple at the bottom of the sea, but there's some actual science kind of warped into it. So that was really interesting, and that's where he got a lot of his inspiration from. Yeah, so that's kind of a fun little thing about SpongeBob, which made a lot of children interested in the ocean,
Right.
much like Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
It comes from somewhere.
Actually, I have a Finding Nemo one. So sea turtles, how the sea turtles in Finding Nemo were like, "What's up, dude?" They were like sort of like stony sounding. It's because sea turtles have actually figured out that they can eat jellyfish and it will get them stoned. Like it'll actually get them high. Like they don't eat it for nutritional purposes. Like they eat it to get high.
They have no nutritional value. Like jellies are just
It's like
basically
water.
like 1 cell thick.
Yeah.
And they just plop around for maybe 2 weeks, and then their bodies are so not there that they just fall apart in the ocean. That's just what they are. So they don't actively control their movement. They just go where the water takes them. Versus things like nekton, which are organisms that decide where they're going. It could be a sea star that crawls, it could be a crab that crawls, or a fish that actively swims and decides. So in this twilight zone, we're mostly talking about fish or whales, things like that can decide where they're squid, they're moving from place to place. And there's not a lot of stuff to grab onto because it's the open ocean, but it's not necessarily deep, so there's nothing to hold on to.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that whole Twilight Zone-y thing.
Okay.
And then a little bit deeper today, which is what we're talking about, is again what actually researchers do call the midnight zone of the ocean. So only about 5% of what's near the surface will actually find its way down So food is very scarce. And other than the occasional large organism, like say a shark or a whale falling down that deep, which is kind of just like an accidental buffet, basically, organisms don't feed very often. They have very slow metabolism, or they have different ways of gathering nutrients or just holding on to nutrients in their body that allow them to survive. They don't breathe very much, so they don't exercise a lot of energy so that they're not hungry all the time, which is essentially why food is there. There's absolutely no light in that zone. It's completely pitch black. So and it's absolutely massive, which we've already talked about a little bit, is that finding each other is very difficult. So a lot of the adaptations that these deep sea organisms have to do with potentially finding a mate for reproductive purposes.
Yeah, right.
If you live in such a huge, vast, deep, dark place and you accidentally run into a species of your own kind, you best be ready.
Yeah.
Because you may not find them again for
Time to get
however
hitched.
long your
That
lifespan
makes-
is.
That
right?
makes
Yeah.
saying
Yeah,
there are
it's-
other fish in the sea really depressing.
Yeah,
It's like,
right,
well,
right.
am I
Or
in
there
the
are
midnight
not.
zone? Because
Yeah.
then that's
there's not
shitty.
really.
Yeah.
And
And
I
then
won't find one for years.
One
on.
is the loneliest number. And then really briefly, the trenches that we know of, we're literally talking the deepest portions of the ocean. Scientists have actually called the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, which I think
that's
See,
kind of fun.
Scientists have a sense of humor, guys.
I enjoy it.
will not accept otherwise. And then, along with no light, pressure is an issue, because that's one of the reasons it's so hard to get down there, is because imagine you're walking around in air, no big deal. The deeper you go in the ocean, the more water is on top of you, and the more it presses down. So your organs don't function properly and all that kind of stuff. So organisms that live down very deep cannot survive near the surface because they're adapted to surviving that far down. So you don't usually see like crazy deep sea creatures in an aquarium because they can't survive unless they have very specialized pressurized tanks. It's super cold down there, but it's stable. So the water temperature doesn't change. And then at the hydrothermal vents, obviously that's really different. It's crazy hot because there's like magma basically coming out of the ocean. But there's like sulfur and all these crazy other gases down there. But because the water won't boil because of all the pressure, it's really interesting. So there's no steam being created. It's weird between pressure and temperature and physics and moving on.
It's really wild watching. Did you watch, what's it called? It's sort of like the Planet Earth, but Blue Planet.
Blue Planet.
The deep sea episode is
they're
insane.
crazy.
It's nuts.
And it's not just like, look at these crazy creatures. It's things like seeing the small animals that do feed on the hydrothermal vents.
Yeah.
And it's like they have to zip in, grab something, and they literally get burned alive.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much.
Like if
You have to
they
be
like
so
one
quick.
slip up and you're burned alive,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like goodness.
The
I could just
pressure.
go to
The
McDonald's.
pressure is on.
literal and figurative. The pressure.
Yes.
There's
Very
pressure.
true.
Melanie goes on to teach us about how light works in the ocean, bioluminescence, underwater weather, and some absolutely terrifying creatures in the sea. If you recognize Mel's voice or name, she's a repeat guest on the show. She joined us all the way back in season 1 for our Hometown Haunts, where we looked at the lore and legends from our ancestral homes. And she joined me 2 years ago for our Limp Mansion paranormal investigation. We fucking love Mel. But that is all the time we have this week for Keep It Weird. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this trip in the Wayback Machine. We will be back in a week or so with a brand new episode. We'll finish out the year with episodes every other week, and then 2025 is a new animal. I've got some ideas brewing, but your input is always welcome and appreciated. So if you've got any ideas or requests, please email us at keepitweirdpodcast@gmail.com. You can also DM us on social media at keepitweirdcast on Instagram and Twitter. And we're also making a name for ourselves over on TikTok, so you can follow and interact with us there as well. And again, if you're a fan of the show, you want to support us in a financial way, please join our Patreon at www.patreon.com/keepitweirdpodcast. You'll get bonus episodes every month, discounts on merch. You can sponsor a segment of our show, so every time we do that segment, we'll say your name. And you can even get ad-free episodes if you are annoyed anytime an ad pops up, like me. I'm going to be uploading this episode as soon as it's done being edited. I wish we had brand new content to distract you guys with this week, as I said before, but unfortunately we don't. One thing that I will say has helped me this week is listening to these older clips. Every one of these, I think, with the exception of maybe 2 of them, were recorded during Donald Trump's first term as president. Now, I'm not saying that another term of his won't be dangerous, that we won't lose friends and family, and that we won't lose a lot of hope on top of that. But there will still be moments of laughter and love, even in the worst of times. And you always have us as a safe space. You have your fellow weirdos. So if you feel as though you don't have a community where you are right now, please reach out. Join our Facebook group. Join our Patreon as a free member if you don't have the funds to donate. We are a network of people who have an abundance of empathy, maybe even at times too much of it. I don't even know if that's a thing, but we will help you. We can create more spaces or bigger spaces. We can organize fundraisers. We will do anything in our power to ensure that we all get through this and maybe even come out more badass on the other side. I'm picturing myself with like a scar over my eye and like missing an arm. But honestly, if that's what it takes, because fuck Nazis, fuck racism, fuck transphobia and homophobia. These people are losers, and history will remember them as such. So just hang in there, okay? And here's the thing, like, if it all does burn to the ground, no offense, but good riddance. So, we love you. We will be back as soon as we can with new episodes of the show. Keep it weird. Hail Satan.